SMT Nation, we back. We're going to be talking about T-Mobile today and their network, fresh off the heels of a huge, massive quarter. And we got a bunch of financial stuff. We got a bunch of retail stuff, a lot of good, positive things and great momentum. But something that I think we're probably most interested in are the updates and the tidbits about the network. We're obviously a more network-focused channel. So let's look at some of the things we learned from the two main individuals at the company, the CEO and president of the company, Mike Sievert, and then also the president of technology, Neville Ray. So the first thing I wanted to mention in terms of the network evolution is Mike Sievert disclosed that T-Mobile has completely decommissioned all of the planned Sprint sites that they wanted to. So whatever that magical number was, maybe it was 5,000 or 10,000 across the country, they have finally achieved that goal. And they said that they did so a year early. So they've accelerated that part of the plan. Okay, so if we're forward looking a year from today, instead of finalizing their decommissioning project, they're going to be on to something else. They're for the next year, they're going to be accelerating through their network plans, their network builds, their network modifications, their network densification, whatever part of the network they have to continue to improve upon, build, or get ahead of their competition. They're doing that instead of decommissioning Sprint sites. So bravo to them and a nice job of getting those synergies going early as they progress through their plan. All right, along those same lines, they have now reached 250 million pops of what they refer to as 5G UC, which is their mid-band 5G dedicated mid-band channel. This is the 2.5 gigahertz, the N41 that they essentially really wanted out of the Sprint merger. Hitting the 250 million pops, no surprise. We've been discussing this for several weeks, but this is an indication of how far along they are in their build. So it's an exciting number for them. I think their next uh, landmark checkpoint, whatever, is going to be 300 million. They'd like to be there relatively soon. But once you get to this point in these network builds, closing the last 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 million pops, that's the hardest thing to do. Right, so trying to get to 300 or 320 million, cover the country, it's a very difficult task, but they are moving along quite nicely. Another thing to kind of discuss is their ability to now compete in rural America has improved. According to CEO Mike Sievert, he mentioned that at the start of the year, they were able to compete in 30% of rural households across the country. So 30% means that they effectively have a chance to compete for the business of 40% of the country's population, which essentially lives in geographical space that's considered to be rural. They only can compete for less than one third of them. So this could be retail, this could be network, this could be a collection of things. So basically, T-Mobile wasn't fit to compete for customers against the likes of AT&T and Verizon, who for the most part have a much more substantial rural network build. And when it comes to coverage and reliability and availability, that's what those customers need. Okay, so the capacity needs of like urban America are not the cellular needs of rural America. So they're very different. But now they've moved beyond that 30%. They're now in a 50% addressable rural household number, and they want to be by up to 60% by the end of the year. Commendable, respectable, and a big number for them, in my opinion, because they're going to go into those markets doing two things. Number one, they're going to be competing for mobile customers. Number two, they're going to be competing for home internet customers, competing with DSL providers, satellite providers, regional ISPs, cable companies, those types of things. And they can offer an upsell through Magenta MAX, and they can get a whole bunch of lines, right, and offer people better prices and also have their back scratched through fixed wireless access. And remember, in rural America, the capacity needs are not what they are in urban, right? You don't need a tower site every 4 or 5 blocks on a rooftop site like you do in a city, and you don't need small cells as much and all of those things. So the rural America piece is interesting for them to explore and grow. All right. Now, additionally, when you look at the theme of what Mike Seaver is pushing here, kind of like the story, is best network, best price. That's what he wants to do. We've heard it several quarters in a row. And he's saying that they're there. We offer the best price, which I agree. Their pricing is the best amongst the big three. Now, when it comes to best network, that's going to be situational. A lot of people might have different experiences than someone else or whatever. But when it comes to the 5G availability, they're really pushing that narrative. So now they're saying things like our 5G is becoming our network. Most of the traffic is on 5G, unlike their quote unquote competitions networks, which are, carried mostly over LTE. But these things are dynamic and It's changing. It's not going to be like this for very long. AT&T, more and more of their customers are using 5G plus, their dedicated C-band and 77 build. Same thing for Verizon. Those percentages are going up 100 to 200% increase usage on 5G channels every quarter. But with a majority, who knows, maybe it's like 50 or 60% of T-Mobile's network traffic is now over 5G channels. They're saying things like we're 2 years ahead of Verizon, right? And we're going to stay 2 years ahead of Verizon. Notice that they're targeting Verizon here. They sense the weakness. And they know that Verizon is viewed as the number one carrier, and they are the number one carrier. So they're shooting for the sky, and they're looking at Verizon and attacking them in a time of weakness. So one of the things that Neville Ray said was this is the busiest quarter ever in the network, and they did it all while reducing the churn rate. Well, Sprint was crap. You know what I mean? This is kind of like when you look at the liar sandwich of corporations, this is the liar sandwich part. Like Sprint's network was absolute trash in so many places. And with T-Mobile decommissioning assets and trying to solidify a uniform tower grid, it has to improve. It can't go down. And there are growing pains, I will admit. They are right about that. Usually when you're modifying and changing a lot of cell sites, you get a lot of inconsistent performances. You get a lot of problems. You get like stuff like dropped calls and data outages and things like that as they modify, upgrade, and modernize tower sites. So that is true. But the Sprint churn was so bad, and now things are finally starting to stabilize. I just don't know if we want to accredit that to T-Mobile. It's just the Sprint was bad, the Sprint churn was bad, the network was bad for a lot of people, and eventually it had to kind of stabilize. But if you catch kind of like the undertone and the overtone amongst all of this, you will see that T-Mobile really is starting to stabilize the business. Who they are, this is what they have become, right? Commanding lead over the rivals AT&T and Verizon when it comes to 5G pops. And they're also starting to address, or I should say, focus in on these addressable markets in these new places where they didn't compete before. And there are a lot of people who are very happy with their services. And because they're going into places and building the network, it is a more modern version of cellular networking compared to the older Verizon sites that will need to be upgraded, and they will be in the next year or two. And the same thing with AT&T, right? And that's something that AT&T has done very well through the FirstNet program, right, with that contract. So this is what's really forcing the competitive nature of the environment in the telco market. It's the fact that T-Mobile has been able to absolutely disrupt and compete fiercely with the likes of Verizon and AT&T. This is big time, folks. And according to Neville Ray, which I agree with him on this one, he said more is to come. There's going to be more benefits as we move spectrum onto the 5G side of the network and move away from LTE. We're going to see standalone 5G launch, and there's going to be improved spectral efficiency. So a lot of the concerns about like fixed wireless access and 5G home harming the environment, some of that's going to be offset. Some of that's going to be a little bit overstated. We're going to be seeing improvements to the network in time. So their spectrum advantage is big for them. Their movement towards SA5G is big for them. And the densification process, looking at how their CapEx actually executes, that's going to be big for them too. And they could move towards small cells very soon, right? The macro grid, they're just going to shore up some coverage, which is the hardest thing to do. But as they do that, they start looking at these addressable markets that could be using millimeter wave here in a couple of years. We don't expect it anytime soon, but CRAN and small cells are a must, and I think they know that too. They're just kind of dreading the grind for now. They're addressing, I think, some of those financial things and trying to attract the investor and so on. And those things are attractive to investors. Lots of growth, lots of positive. The 5G leadership story. They're going to be pushing those things. This isn't going to stop, by the way. Q4 is going to sound a lot like this one today, folks, right? And the other carriers are going through all these other things. T-Mobile's just keeping the positive momentum going. Comment down below. You are the voice of the people, the SMT Nation. Let your voice be heard. Like, share, subscribe for more, and turn on that bell notification icon to never miss an upload. Links are in the description for my Twitter handle, my Gmail address for business inquiries, my Patreon page if you want to support us and get early access to videos and exclusive content not found anywhere else. And don't forget, you can now become a member. Hit that join button and support your favorite creators here on YouTube. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one. Peace.